Thank you so much. So now that we have officially started, I'm gonna share a bit more about my background, my case, and who I am. So currently, I'm 17 years old. I'm a high school senior, so I didn't take any gap years. And during my application process, I was applying as a 16-year-old. And I also applied as a public school student from a really small town. So I had a lot less opportunities available to me. And honestly, so very few people have heard of admissions in the US and just studying abroad in general from my school. So coming from a public school, it was a bit more complicated for me to actually build a strong case. I also applied as a social research and public policy major for various reasons, but mostly because it was a really good fit for my application, and it also covered a lot of my interests. And I also come from a gay republic located in Russia in the Northern Caucasus, and very few people from my hometown also know about the application process, so I didn't really have a community during my own application journey. You can also move now. So, genuinely, I wanted to study abroad my entire life, but due to the lack of support from my family and due to limited opportunities, it seemed impossible for me at the time. So, I have started applying to American universities in 11th grade, but I have started building my case during the summer after my ninth grade, because that was a turning point when I didn't get into medical school that my parents wanted me to go. And honestly, I'm so grateful now that I didn't get in because I wouldn't be here now. So I feel like it was a sign from the universe itself. But yeah, so I have actually started thinking about applying to American universities when I was in eighth grade, and that was the moment when I started gaining a lot of theoretical knowledge about it. I started following people who already got in on Telegram. I started watching webinars on YouTube. And honestly, if I even had Borderless at that moment, I feel like it would make my life so much easier. But yeah, so during that period of time in ninth and 10th grade, I had a little understanding of what can help me stand out, because I felt like my application would be really mediocre in comparison to other international applicants due to limited opportunities. Like my school didn't even have any school clubs, and my school hasn't even heard of the word counselor. Like they had literally no idea about recommendation letters and stuff like this. So I also didn't know how to build my case to be strong enough to get me into a university with a full ride. And oftentimes I also thought about giving up because I also, as I've mentioned, didn't have much opportunities and much support because my family was really against me studying abroad, mostly because they thought financial aid wouldn't be possible for me to obtain because they haven't even heard of the word full ride before I mentioned it to them. And I started applying without anyone knowing. So my parents didn't even know till I received my candidate weekend offer from NYU Abu Dhabi. So I had to do it all without telling them. And I was really confused about the application process and how to present my case. So even though I had a lot of theoretical knowledge, I didn't really know how to put it to use. Like there are so many tips on the internet on how to write your essays and stuff like that. But when you actually start doing all of those things, without any mentorship, without any support, it can be really confusing as to how actually make it look really impressive. So now, as my endpoint in 11th grade, I have a deep and engaging personal statement, and I'm gonna share like more tips later on how to actually choose a topic, how to improve your writing skills. And then I also have solid activities, even though most of them were created online. So I didn't even have any debate, research, any conventional volunteering, extracurricular activities. And I also have an application strong enough to get me into a university with an acceptance rate of 3% with a full ride. So about my college list. So far, I have only applied to 13 universities, and 11 of them are in the US, one of them in United Arab Emirates, and one of them was in China. So I applied early decision one to Bowdoin College, located in Maine, and I got rejected. So about that, of course, I cannot really know the reason, like for my rejection and stuff, but I'm guessing that it was because of my background, because I did my research about like other applicants from my country only after I have actually sent the application, and all of them were rejected in the last couple of years, apart from one applicant from Kazakhstan, I believe. So you have to take into consideration other people's cases when you're doing your college research. And then I applied early decision two to New York University Abu Dhabi campus, and I got accepted with a full rate scholarship. And then I applied regular decision to colleges like Grinnell, Hamilton, Bates, Wesleyan, Williams, Colby, Colgate, Whitman, Duke and Cheng University, located in China, Trinity, Connecticut, and Rhodes. So honestly, looking at my college list, I wouldn't have applied to some of those universities because I felt like I was pushed to apply to more universities to increase my chances. But that is such a common misconception because my quality of my applications didn't really suffer from it. But at the very same time, I didn't have a fit with all of the universities that I applied to. I was doing it out of desperation after my rejection, I would say. So you also have to kind of put your feelings aside when you're doing your college research. And then why New York University Abu Dhabi? So I'm really happy that it's my alma mater now. And I applied mostly because of generous financial aid. Like I have heard of so many cases where people would get full rate scholarships, but honestly, lately, New York University Abu Dhabi stopped giving that much financial aid because when we were applying, like a lot of my friends, we all thought that this university was need-based only. But then, after a lot of people in my batch, early decision two, got very little financial aid, we have emailed those like New York University Abu Dhabi, and some people received an email that they also give financial aid based on your entire application, so they take into consideration your academic performance. So basically, how much they really want to see you attending New York University Abu Dhabi. And then I had a really strong personal fit in values and application all in all, mostly because of diversity and social impact and community, which are like all of the topics that I mentioned in my own application. And also location and culture was a big factor because even when I was applying to my early decision one choice, which was Bowdoin College, I couldn't really imagine myself attending it for various reasons, but I also feel like it was because of the culture, because each campus has different culture. It doesn't really depend on the country. And before applying to my early decision one choice, I talked to some people. I even had a video call with one of the students there, and she wrote me a recommendation letter. And I felt like I had a great fit, but based on the community, I couldn't really see myself attending this university. So I didn't have this with New York University Abu Dhabi, and it was more of a gut feeling. But also the community, and especially Russian-speaking community, is really strong and amazing. So that was a big factor. And then because of the study abroad opportunities. So in my university, we have J terms. One of them is fully abroad, one of them is in Abu Dhabi, and one of them is in Abu Dhabi with a trip abroad, I believe. So there are also a lot of campuses of NYU, like even in Los Angeles, in Italy, in Spain, and main campus in New York City and also in Shanghai. So like studying abroad also appealed to me. Then NYU Abu Dhabi has 3 application stages, and the first one is Common App application, which is pretty basic. It is not that different from other American universities. Second of them is Candidate Conversation, and the last one is Candidate Weekend. So for common application, I would advise you to apply early decision because it really increases your chances. And then you have to do your research and see if you have a fit, because I believe that a fit plays like a huge role when they are assessing your application. And then one supplemental essay that NYU has, it doesn't really depend on the campus, is an essay that you have to write based on a quote. So there were different quotes that you can choose from the portal, or you can choose your own quote. And I chose my own one. So, and then the second stage is candid conversation. Basically, it's like a 15-minute interview with staff member or an admission officer. And personally, I had one with an admission officer. So it is also an invitation to candidate conversation also means that your chances of acceptance are way higher. And when I was only like offered this candidate conversation, I searched on Reddit that they have like an 80% acceptance rate. Like if you get candidate conversation offer, you can get into Abu Dhabi with like higher chances. But I believe that this percent is not that accurate. I believe that around 50% would be a more right number. On candid conversation, I had questions like, tell me about yourself. And I believe this is like the most basic question that you get on every interview with any American university. And then why NYU Abu Dhabi, why your major. Those were like the questions that I expected myself. And before candid conversation, I was doing my research for like 3 days. I had a huge file on Google Docs where I wrote down all of the stuff that I could mention, all of the stories I could mention, no matter the question that I was asked, and that helped a lot. And then there were 2 unexpected questions like, what do you think you will struggle with on campus? And what is your perception of United Arab Emirates? So honestly, I wasn't prepared, but I think I answered pretty well because I was like, I tied it to my application and I tied it to my own hometown because like the culture is similar and stuff. And as for the question, what do you think you will struggle with? I said that diversity could be a thing, but then once again, that is the thing that appealed to me in New York University, Abu Dhabi. And I also grew up in a really diverse hometown, so that wouldn't be a problem. Candidate Weekend, this was honestly the highlight of my entire application process and a dream come true. So Candidate Weekend is a 2-day event where you meet admission officers and your potential future classmates. And they basically make this last application stage for you to immerse yourself into university life, see for yourself if you're a fit. And thankfully, my batch got a candidate weekend, which was in person in Abu Dhabi. So that was amazing. And also, if you got to the last application stage, candidate weekend, the chances of you getting admitted are also really high. So here are some pics of what candidate weekend look like. And on my first day, we went on a trip to the desert. That was amazing. There were like so many amazing people. There were more than 200 applicants from all over the world. And honestly, it was really easy to get along with everyone. So this trip was really fun. And there were also a lot of people from Russian-speaking countries. And as for the second day, we started it off with a trip around Abu Dhabi. So it was like a bus trip, like a tour, I would say. So after that, we went to the campus finally, and honestly, it was mind-blowing. And the campus was actually bigger than I expected. So it was really impressive. And in the beginning of our day on the campus, there were a lot of speeches given by different admission officers and then also by current students. And after that, we went on a campus tour. So Following this, we went also on a lecture of our choice. So there were different lectures for us to see how classes look like, what professors are like. And I chose the lecture that was connected to social studies. And our professor was both a Harvard and Stanford alumni. So that was honestly incredible as well. So yeah, that was pretty much it. And by the way, the university covered absolutely all costs, so I didn't spend a single penny in during my trip. And when you're choosing colleges, it is really significant to take into consideration financial aid, and then whether or not the university is more of a STEM university or liberal arts. And then also a really crucial factor is community, because you shouldn't apply if you can't see yourself attending the university, because you're going to spend like the 4 years of your life there. So it's really important to consider all of those factors. And here are some questions that you should consider when choosing your colleges based on financial aid. So whether or not they are merit or need-based, maybe they're like a mix. What is minimum estimated family contribution? So estimated family contribution is basically how much money your family can afford to pay to the university. And this number of like a minimum estimated family contribution for each college cannot really be found. Like it's not the information that is in open source. So you have to research Reddit, and you also have to do research within your own country. Like what kind of amount students usually pay. And then you can also find information on how many international students receive financial aid and what's the amount that's usually covered in CDS. So each college has common data set where this information is listed. And then you have to consider whether or not the university gives any full ride scholarships. Also, second factor is whether or not the university is STEM or liberal arts. So you have to think of what the university is known for. I wouldn't advise you to look at the rankings of like each area of studies because they are not that accurate. So it's better to talk to current students to see whether or not they have better engineering programs or maybe art-related programs. And then you have to take into consideration whether or not they have a major you're interested in. And also, the most important factor is community. So, can you see yourself attending the university? Will you feel belonging and have like minded people? And even during CV, I feel like all of us could connect so easily because we were really similar in our values, in our goals. So, basically, like minded people. And then do the culture of the campus and of the place also resonate with you? And do you have a feed based on your application? That's like the most important question that you should ask yourself. And then where can you find all of this information that I have mentioned about your college search? So Common Data Set is a really useful file that each university has, but not all of them are in open source. Like you cannot find all of them on the internet. So you can look at the sectors like H6, which is for financial aid for international students, and then C1. It mentions the percent and number of enrolled students with SAT or other exams and like average test scores. So for example, when I was applying to Trinity College, Connecticut, I didn't really know that they mostly accept applicants who apply not test optional. So those who send their SAT scores. And I have found this information not from Common Data Set, but from a current student from Russia. So you can find this information by yourself on the internet. And then you have to also look up the socials and Reddit. These two are like the most important sources when doing your college search, and they can be even more useful than just college websites. So on Reddit, there are communities like Applying to College and International to USA. Those were really useful and I used them like myself. And then as for my stats, I have a 4.9 out of 5 GPA. So I only have one B in math for like 3 years, and I only applied with my like GPA from my not ninth, yeah, 10th and 11th grade. So I didn't send GPA for my 8th grade because it would ruin my GPA a little bit. So if the university doesn't ask for your GPA from like a particular grade, like the 8th grade, you don't have to send it. And then as for my English exam score, I only took Duolingo English test and I scored 150 out of 160 on my very first try. So I didn't take IELTS or TOEFL, and you don't have to if you don't have the financial means or if you don't have time to prepare. And then I also went as optional because all the SAT test taking centers were closed in Russia, as well as IELTS taking centers. And then my school is a public school, so I had no IB, AP, or A levels. And then, as for my Duolingo English test preparation, I was preparing for like 2 weeks and I got the score, but it's really important to consider that this particular exam checks your real English level. So IELTS is more about structure, and Duolingo English test is more about your real English knowledge. So I was preparing using Teacher Luke on YouTube. And then what helped me after that, when I have learned a lot more about the structure, was practicing my writing and speaking. So actually, I have been preparing for IELTS before that, but only for like the second essay. So that also helped because the structure is like really similar both in IELTS, TOEFL, and Duolingo English tests. And then when I have learned all of the like different tasks and stuff, I started practicing different structures. So you can basically look up like the official Duolingo English Test website and then see what structures work the best. Like using what particular writing structures or speaking structures, you get a higher score. And then as for my extracurricular activities, as I have already mentioned, I had no summer schools, no research, no school-related activities, and no debate. So the majority of my extracurriculars was online, and I didn't create my extracurriculars for the sake of impressive application. So I had done this mistake during my 10th grade, I believe in summer when I was preparing my application. So I was comparing myself to all the other applicants, and I was like, oh my God, they are so impressive. They have internships, they have research. What am I gonna put? Like, I'm not gonna get in with my current extracurriculars. And as a matter of fact, I only added one extracurricular activities, and all of the other that I have put on my Common App were extracurriculars that I have been doing throughout my life. So I didn't really create anything for the Common App only. There was only like one project. So I also didn't fake my passions. So my like extracurriculars list was made up quite naturally. So I didn't really put anything for the sake of looking impressive. And then all of my extracurriculars were connected to other topics that I have brought up in my application, like my essay and all of the other aspects. And they were focused on 2 or 3 main areas of interest. So that is really important. And then, so my extracurricular list looked something like one area. So basically, 3 extracurriculars were connected with social media work. So I was an SMM manager for one of the big bloggers at the time, and I was also helping her conduct her projects in areas that were also relevant in my application. So while it was more of an analytical job, it was still combined with the topics brought up in my application, and it also like showcased my values, because I say that it was social media work, but the topics that were covered during my work and the way that I have made it look in my Common App when I was like describing my activities, it showcased my values. So that is also really important to consider. And then I was also volunteering as an English teacher. And then also I had a project that was more focused on CS, so computer science, and then also connected with web development. So I consider it volunteering because I was doing it for the community. And then there were also activities related to languages and web development. So I even put that I was studying languages and like by my own, and I have mentioned all the resources that I have used. And then the same goes for web development. I mentioned it as a freelance job. And when you're creating your activities list, it's really important to start by writing down all your current activities. So that will give you a better understanding of what current data you have to present to the admission officers, what you should focus on, and you have to analyze your main areas of interest. So if your current activities are more focused on, I don't know, biology, and you want to major in something completely different, so you should focus on creating activities that would be connected to something you would like to potentially major in. And then you have to choose your major and see which already existing activities can fit. And then you should also brainstorm what kind of activities you like, and they should be focused on leadership, volunteering, hobbies, maybe arts or tech. So I would advise you to look at this group right here and make a balanced activities list. You can also use different sources when describing your activities, but it's really important to be specific. So you should use numbers and say exactly what you did. If you struggle with describing your activities, there is a guide from a college essay guide, sorry, and you can find it on the internet. It's in open access. So you can also use strong verbs when describing your activities to make it look, I would say, more impressive and to showcase like your role in this particular activity. And you also have to be concise because there is a limited space. And it's really important to show impact and your values. And as for my Common Up essay, it started with this line right here. So my entire body is covered in tattoos, but I'm the only one who can see them. So it was more of a hook. And then how did I find my topic? So first of all, I started, I would say, during summer, like the late summer before 11th grade, and I had difficulty finding a topic because there were so many things I wanted to write about, and I just started by making as many drafts as possible. And I realized that there were some topics that would constantly come up. So I just combined some of them that would make me look like a whole puzzle in the eyes of an admission officer, rather than a person who is really multi-passionate, because it could negatively affect my application. So after that, I have chosen also the size of my cell that I wanted to reveal to the admission officers and what I wanted to focus on in my essay. So you have to think of the main story that you want to share as well. And you have to look at it from the perspective of whether or not it is connected to other things that you have mentioned in your application, because you cannot look like one person in your extracurriculars that interested in one things and then be a completely different person in your essays. So you also have to think of the structure of your essay. So there is a montage and narrative structure. So I had a montage essay. So that's basically like when you are combining several topics, but you're making them all connected. So you can start with, I don't know, like I did with tattoos. So you can start each paragraph with some things that would connect all of those things that you mentioned during your essay. And then here are some tips and things that I wish someone has told me during my own application process. And honestly, there are so many things and so many information about the application process. So it can be really easy to get lost in all of them. And I would advise you, most importantly, to be strategic. So it is related to both your time, because time management is extremely important, and also the what you put on your application. So basically the things that you want the admission officer to know about you and the way that you want to present yourself. And also on a topic of being a whole puzzle, not thousands of different pieces, That mostly relates to having a common story throughout your entire application. So throughout your extracurriculars and your essays as well. So basically you have to focus on maybe three main topics during your entire application. And also everyone has a story to tell, but it's all about how you choose to tell it. Because believe me that admission officers have heard of so many stories of so many topics, and some of them have become cliche. So I don't think that my essay was like extremely creative and there were topics that never, like no one has ever like mentioned before. No, but it was all about how I connected it to myself and how I connected it to details. So you have to be really specific, and your essay has to be also really specific, and it shouldn't be tied to anyone else in a way that I don't know, if the admission officers put another name of on your essay, it shouldn't be like be able to be connected with anyone else. The most important thing that I have also showcased during my own application process is being authentic and not creating an image of someone you're not. So once again, don't do something just because you think it can look really impressive, because it can look really fake on the contrary. So you just have to tell your story. And there was one advice that I have heard on Reddit during my own application journey. So if you had one story to tell about your life, what would you say to the admission officers? So it doesn't mean that you have to tell your entire life story. No, you have to focus on some things. So you cannot just start with writing your common up essay about your entire life. But once again, you have to think of the things that were really important to you throughout your entire life, things you were passionate about, and showcase it in your application. And then also don't compare yourself to other applicants. So there is also a community called Chance Me on Reddit, and I found it to be like super toxic because it only made me spiral, because there were so many impressive applicants, but there were also applicants who had like really high SAT, and then who had like really impressive extracurriculars, and they still didn't get in. And that was because of various factors. Like no one can know the reason for rejection, but once again, just because you have a less impressive application doesn't mean you can't make it look impressive in other ways, in terms of your own story, in terms of your own like things of interest and stuff. And then if you have an opportunity to reach out for help, you should take it. Because I didn't have any mentors, and I didn't use any services that would help with the application process during my own application journey. And honestly, I regret it a bit because it would honestly make my life so much easier. And I started preparing for this application process more seriously in 10th grade. And I would literally grind those 2 years nonstop. So if you have an opportunity to, I don't know, maybe buy some consultations or use Borderless, for example, do this, please. It would save you so much nerves and just time, all in all. And then to sum it all up, I want to tell you guys that everything worth doing is hard. So you should just start where you are with what you have, believe in yourself, and you will get there one day. Because honestly, when I was starting my own application process, I didn't know if it would work, and I knew it was a huge risk to take because I would have to sacrifice maybe getting in to a university with a full scholarship in my own country. Like instead of preparing for exams, I was preparing for this application process, and no one even knew about it. So people would tell me that I became maybe more less enthusiastic about my studies and stuff. I had a lot of arguments with my parents, and like they didn't understand me. So you have to trust your vision. You have to believe in yourself when no one does, and um just do things the way that you believe will work for you, because I feel like that's the most important thing.
Nice. Thank you so much, Ellina. This was super interesting. Let me just stop sharing. Your story resonated a lot. I mean, not only because I went to NYUAD as well, but just because
Mhm.
of the background you're coming from and situation with your parents. Because my mom was also like, I have no idea what you're talking about. How can people pay so much money for you? She thought it's like some scam. And I think there was a perception of UAE being not particularly safe. So she's like, are you sure it's a real school? Like, what's happening? So yeah, I resonated a lot. I thought this was so insightful. We have some more time, so it would be awesome if you guys ask your questions in the chat, and then I'll be reading them out loud to Ellina. While you're typing, maybe I'll ask my question. It's something that I also get from students a lot, especially those who come from, sorry, I'm a little sick, from low income backgrounds, is how do you actually navigate the conversation with your parents? And how did you go from like, I have no idea what this is, to them actually being okay with you flying to a different country? Like, how long did that take? Was it hard? Yeah, all of that.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the nice things you said. And that's a really relevant question for a lot of people. So honestly, it was extremely hard, I'm not gonna lie. And honestly, it's a little bit funny because even when I got in and when I was invited to Candid Weekend, they also said it was a scam and they didn't want to let me go to Abu Dhabi. So I also had to take like some documents to fly out alone because I'm still a minor, I'm still underage. So initially, when I just told my parents about me wanting to study in American universities, I didn't even mention the word American because I knew it would only make the situation worse. So I was like, I want to study abroad. I believe it can actually like happen for me because my English skills were quite great and I have always wanted to study abroad. But I also didn't think it would be possible because of the financial aspect. So when I told them that, my mom was like, are you serious? No one is gonna let you go. Like, how do you imagine going by yourself at such a young age? And I also come from a really conservative background, I would say, because if you guys have heard of Northern Caucasus, you would maybe imagine some things that could be right. So also, like a lot of people here don't actually apply to universities, not only like American ones, but also abroad, all in all. So it was really foreign to them, and their reaction was really negative. So what I would advise you to do is um, prepare your parents, like actually prepare. Start saying things about you wanting to study abroad, maybe mention some information, some scholarships, and don't do it at one sitting. Like find a right moment and just do it for some time for them to adjust to this information and for them to eventually come to terms with this. So I also feel like what helped a lot was the campus that I have chosen because it's located in Abu Dhabi. And once again, my mom was like, well, it's a bit safer than if you were studying, I don't know, in New York City. So the transition from them being really against it to accepting it was when I actually received my invitation, even though their reaction was really negative. They were like, they knew how passionate I was about it. So they were like, okay, like maybe it's not actually a scam because they contacted NYU Abu Dhabi themselves. So you also have to let your parents maybe do that for them to calm themselves. And then they were like, even if you don't get in, at least you actually fly out to Abu Dhabi for free. So just try it out. But then, yeah, my parents were like extremely against it during my application process. So what I did is I offered an alternative. So I said, okay, if you don't want me to study abroad, maybe in some like faraway countries, maybe I can apply to Turkish universities. So I didn't actually apply, but yeah, I told them that, and my mom was more, I would say, welcoming to this information. So also offer them an alternative while working on things that you actually want. So that's exactly what I did. I just didn't tell them about that and just started applying. Of course, you need financial documents. So I kind of put it this way that I would need them for my Turkish universities, which could be potentially true if I actually applied. So you do need your financial documents. So talking to your parents is inevitable. You should just come to terms with this and approach them in the nicest way possible. And it would all work out in the end anyway.
Amazing. Yeah. in the end of the day, they definitely want the best for you. So as long as you convince them that this is what you want, that you are very serious about it, and not just like spring of the moment. What's the word for that? Yeah. We have an interesting question from Dilbeck, which I'm not sure if you can comment on or I can comment on, but he's asking, what do you think is the reason why NYUAD accepts more girls?
That is actually such a funny question because there is this one friend that I made a candid weekend, and he asked this question to the admissions that were literally sitting in front of him. So I didn't really know what their reaction and response was. And honestly, I don't think anyone has any, I would say, reasonable explanation for this. But I also feel like more international students apply to universities abroad. And if we're taking into consideration NYU Abu Dhabi, it's a really diverse place. So people from over the world come there. And I feel like more international students are generally girls. So there are a majority of international students rather than Emirati students on campus. So I also feel like just because girls apply more. I don't really know.
I mean, girls like to study. I do feel like
Yeah.
we are the type of people
More,
who's like
yeah.
grinding
More,
on English and yeah, all these things.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. The next question is, Ellina, did you enjoy your application journey?
Honestly, I'm gonna be completely transparent with you. I enjoyed the moments when I was like writing my essays and I was in my own little world, and I just really enjoy the writing aspect of the admissions, but everything else stressed me out so much, so I didn't really enjoy it that much. But I also feel like this application journey definitely elevated me as a person, and I grew a lot. I learned a lot of things about myself also because I was journaling a lot to kind of find my personal brand and to find the things that would make me stand out. So I feel like I have learned a lot more about myself, what I want from this life during my own application journey, and I enjoyed this aspect. I definitely didn't enjoy the aspect of um, like all the documents, all of the I don't know, recommendation letters, process, and stuff like this. So all the technical stuff, I didn't enjoy it at all.
Yeah. All right. The next question is, I guess maybe they're asking you to elaborate a little bit more about the candidate weekend.
Mm-hmm. So you can actually find all of the footage from Candid Weekend on my channel in Telegram because I talk about it there a lot. But basically, they bought all the tickets and all of the hotel reservations. Like they did all of this stuff themselves, so we didn't really have to do any of those things. So I flew out on February 8th, but some people actually came to the hotel already on February 8th. But Candidate Weekend itself was during February 9 and 10. So I left the hotel during February 10th, yeah. And then so I flew out to Dubai, and there were like different services at the airport that picked us up. So it was really early in the morning, but people were coming at like different times because everyone had like different tickets. But also one thing they did is that if you flew out from like the same airport as other Candid Weekend students, you flew out in like seats next to each other. So that was really convenient. And then they picked us up at the airport, but it was VIP service first that picked us up, and then only NYU Abu Dhabi stuff, I believe. So at the airport, I met some admission officers that I have seen on the original website of New York University Abu Dhabi. And then I also met some current students. So there was one girl from Uzbekistan that I met at the airport, and other students from South Africa, I believe. So they picked us up. We then went to the hotel, and we started getting to know each other. So initially there was like a little lobby allocated for candidate weekend only. And that was when I met like 15 students from different countries. And then I just went to my room. I returned to the lobby and I saw like more than 100 people. I was flabbergasted. I was like, I want to talk to everyone, but at the same time, there are so many people. And the diversity was, I would say, really great. So you have to be ready to talk to a lot of people from different backgrounds. And only then we went to the desert. So at the desert, we had like different groups where we would share our home objects. So basically, they asked us to bring some objects that would remind us of home. And they said that Candid Weekend itself wasn't evaluative. So it didn't really um, I would say influence our chances of acceptance. But they asked us to bring this object and introduce ourselves. So I feel like they took into consideration the way that we behaved ourselves, the way that we kind of fit in with the campus, with the community and stuff. So I brought Baja, and I feel like it was really memorable because everyone was just taking photos with it and running around the desert wearing it. So that was really nice. But other people also brought some cars that they played with their families and like a lot of different objects. But after that, we went to on the second day we went to a trip to like around Abu Dhabi, so like a bus tour, as I have already mentioned. It was really great. We made only one stop. I don't really remember the place, but I believe it was a memorial of the first president of the UAE. And then we went to the campus. So that was like the most interesting part. And I also got to meet a lot of people from Russian speaking countries who already attend the university. So they shared their experience. I also met my own like admission officer that interviewed me during my candid conversation. So we met in real life and he recognized me right away. So that was really nice. And also, I feel like the most memorable part was the lecture because I have always dreamed of attending some kind of class in real life, but I never got a chance before. So I also really enjoyed the lecture itself, the presentation, the professor were really like all of those things were really nice. And then after that, they had a campus mixture. So there were like people giving speeches, like the admission officers, and then we had time to just enjoy ourselves, to talk to current students, to just have some fun. Honestly, those 2 days were like really fun and the funniest part of my entire application journey. So I have enjoyed it a lot and we made so many memories and we still remember this candid weekend to this day. And I wish I could return back to it, to be honest.
Yeah, I had the same memories of my candidate weekend, even though ours was a lot more intense. We actually had a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of assignments and interviews. And I remember on the last day, we had this assignment where they put us all in a big hall. It was called like multi-purpose room. There's a bunch of chairs, and they had a lot of printouts of different objects or nature on the wall. And essentially, the assignment was that you have to run and grab a paper and write about your candidate weekend experience in relation to that object that you see. And so I made some friends as upperclassmen, and they were like, oh, you have to sit at the back chairs, so you're the closest to the wall, and you have to kind of like pick the picture you want early on and like really sprint to get it. Because if you're at the front, you will just take whatever is left and you might have like a hard time writing a story. So we were quite stressed out, and I feel like they did change things quite a bit for you guys. So yeah, I feel like they are still experimenting with the format of this candidate weekend. So whoever is coming next year, you guys might have a quite different experience. But it'll be
Yeah,
a super
and
fun either way.
yeah, that's really nice. And honestly, I feel like it would be more stressful if they actually made the things the way it was like during your own application process. Because I feel like they added this candid conversation to actually not have any assignments during candid weekend itself. So we were also wondering whether or not we would have like essays or any interviews. But then we also thought that like we had supplemental essay, we had an interview, and even people who had the interview didn't get to the next application stage to candidate weekend itself. So I feel like it's really nice that they actually made my batch the first one in 4 years to have a candidate weekend in person. So I got really lucky too. But as for the upcoming years, I also feel like it's going to be in person now. But it's also a question of finance because they spent quite a lot of money on it because they also put us in a 5-star hotel for 2 days. So that was a really nice, I would say, benefit of the candidate weekend.
Yeah. All right. We'll take the last question by the waitlist guy who is funnily enough asking if it's worth taking the second gap year.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I didn't take any gap years. So I also feel like if you have something to rely on, you can take a gap year. But I don't really know if I can say this information out loud, but some people take gap years while studying at a university in their home country. So you can also do this, and I'm guessing that you're already studying in a university in your own home country. So I guess that if you can actually make time for the application process for like your third or second attempt, then I would say go for it. But it all depends on your goals and what you want for your future. But I also feel like I would really regret it later on in life if I didn't actually try applying, because I wouldn't even be here if I didn't go against all the people who didn't really support me. If I just trusted my own vision, like I wouldn't have gotten so far. So I guess it all depends on you as a person.
Yeah, definitely. I would say in my grade, I've definitely seen people who were about 3 years older than me. So I assume they took at least one, probably two gap years. But at the same time, there's other things you can do other than study for the SAT. So I guess it is, yeah, up to how much you really want it and how much you feel like you're ready to bet on this thing. Because acceptance rates are so low where even if you try really hard, sometimes it just unfortunately doesn't work out. So you have to kind of be realistic about this. But at the same time, you can develop projects, you can improve your English, you can learn so much about yourself. So as long as you don't consider it a waste of time, I think it's a pretty good idea to put in a lot of effort for your applications.